as I often do, because we have guests tonight who are going to make a presentation. We have Goodwin Wharton from the LA Bureau of Engineering, who is going to talk to us about the pedestrian trail, which runs from the mouth of Potrero Canyon to Temescal Canyon, per the coastal permit for George Wolfberg Park of Potrero Canyon. So, Goodwin, there you
Hello,
are.
can you hear me?
I have made you a co-host so you can share your screen anytime you want.
Excellent.
So in the meantime, Jenny has entered the room. So perhaps later she can give her treasurer's report.
Okay.
Can you all see this title slide okay?
Yes.
Okay, so this is sort of an update presentation. Back in August of last year, we held a meeting at the Palisades Branch Library to discuss this project. And obviously, since then, a lot of things have changed, but we have been proceeding with this project after a bit of a pause. And so we wanted to present the kind of initial findings and recommendations of the feasibility study for the trail. As a reminder, and for anybody who may not be aware, this project is intended to connect the south end of Potrero Canyon to the intersection of PCH and Temescal Canyon for the purpose of providing beach access for Wolfberg Park. This figure is from LABOE, Bureau of Engineering, just to show the location of the project. This presentation will take about 20 minutes, I think. And I have this agenda. I just wanted to start by acknowledging that, you know, this project is probably not high on anybody's priority list right now. But it is sort of a component of the rebuilding process after the fire. And in the interest of making it available to proceed at a time when it is appropriate for construction to start on this project, we're completing the feasibility study portion of this project so that it's documented and available for use at the appropriate time. I know Kristen from Bureau of Engineering is on also. Kristen, did you want to say anything right now?
Sure, I can hop in. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kristen Lai. I'm with the City of Los Angeles Bureau of Engineering, and I'm the project manager for this project, working with Goodwin on the feasibility study. And I do want to acknowledge, I know there's been a lot happening in the Palisades, and I very much admire everyone's resilience. And we're going to do our best to help rebuild the best that we can.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm going to start as I go through the background with a quick refresher on things that we presented at the meeting last year. So this is just kind of a quick overview of what the project is. People who have been around may have known this project as the Lateral Trail project for some time. It's officially called the Palisades Pedestrian Trail Project. And as I mentioned, it's connecting the south end of, or southwest end of Wolfberg Park to the corner of Temescal Canyon and PCH. And the reason for this is that it's required by the Coastal Commission permit for Wolfberg Park to create beach access. So right now we are completing the feasibility study. So the purpose of this meeting is to present the preliminary recommendations that are going to go into our report and our recommended alignment for the trail, and also to solicit some feedback on that recommended alignment. A quick review of project milestones. A major component of this survey was, or project was, a topographic survey of the site which was flown in late July, early August of last year. There was an initial public comment meeting in August of last year, and the final survey report and record of survey were filed in October of last year. Then we had a stakeholder meeting with Caltrans, California Coastal Commission, and Rec and Parks. And then at the end of last year, we were developing the trail alignments and evaluating the feasibility of each of them. And then obviously when the Palisades fire started, we had to kind of reevaluate what was going to happen with this project. And part of the reason for that is that the site has changed somewhat. The site burned, and then there were the debris flows. And so there may be some change to the topography. So we reevaluated whether it was necessary to refly the topographic survey, and ultimately decided to proceed with the data that we have. So we're completing the project, and today presenting initial findings and recommendations for that alignment. I do want to give just kind of a very brief recap of what we talked about in the previous public comment meeting. It was pretty well attended in person. There were more than 29 people present. It was also broadcast online, and then I think the recording was viewed by quite a few more people than that. We hosted a survey that was open for a week, and we got 179 responses to the online survey. During that meeting, we presented these 3 hypothetical examples of trail alignments. As you'll see, we wound up evaluating permutations of these that are actually fairly similar to what you see on the screen, but with some complexity. There's a fair amount of detail here, but the main takeaway that we got from soliciting public input was that in addition to the user experience for the trail, there was a high priority from the community on issues related to safety. And that included people using the trail as a way to access potential campsites, potentially overnight use, campfires, that sort of thing. And, obviously those concerns are well-founded. So we did take that into consideration as we were developing our final feasibility criteria. So those things have been added to the list that we presented at that time. So this is the site map that we've developed for the project. There's a base layer of the topographic survey, which is gray contour lines. And then we have a geologic map overlaid on that, which is based on work of a previous consultant that looked at the stability of these landslide deposits that are present at the site, which are shown in pink. And then there are some other general features. PCH is shown and shaded in gray. Via de las Olas at the top is also shaded in gray. Various other items that were surveyed, like electrical poles and drainage ditches and that sort of thing. So for our evaluation, what we wound up doing was dividing the site into what we're calling 4 regions. And we had previously been sort of conceiving this as the start of the trail being at the east end at Potrero Canyon, and then the terminus being at the corner of PCH and Temescal. But it kind of just simplified things to think about it the other way around so that everything kind of reads left to right. So we have a small trailhead region in the westernmost part of the site. There's a longer west region, a central region, and an east region. And within those 4 main regions, we've evaluated 2 or 3 alternatives for how the trail might be aligned. And then they're connected by lateral trails such that you could mix and match or combine any permutation of these that you want to come up with a final trail alignment. So I'm just going to kind of briefly step through what the alignment alternatives are for each region. On each of these slides, there's a zoomed in version of the site map, and then there are topographic profiles shown on the right. And these profiles have 3 lines on them. I should also note that there's vertical exaggeration there. So if something appears very steep, it's actually 6 times steeper than it is in real life. And the purpose of the 3 lines is to show the cross grade of the trail. So essentially how steep it is, or the current ground surface is, perpendicular to the direction of travel. And the purpose of this is to easily evaluate accessibility and the amount of earthworks or grading that might be required to develop a trail here. So here in the trailhead region, we have trailhead A, which is shown in blue, and that goes from the corner of PCH and Temescal around the LA Sand pump station, and then sort of hugs the toe of the slope as it continues to the southeast. And you'll see in the profiles that those 3 lines have significant vertical separation, which tells you that there's significant cross grade there. And as a result, more grading is going to be required to develop a trail in that location. Whereas trailhead B, which is just a very short segment along PCH from the corner to the driveway of the Caltrans maintenance yard, is totally flat, basically no cross grade. There's very little work that would be required to develop that segment of the trail. Moving on to the west region, these trails sort of skirt around the existing Caltrans maintenance yard. West A, excuse me, West A continues along the toe of slope, sort of further to the north, and that's also shown in blue. West B is in red, and that's very close to PCH, and is a little bit flatter. Moving on to central region, we evaluated a sort of high road trail, which would utilize some existing trails that already more or less meet the requirements for width of the project, but which, as you can see in the profiles, have a lot more elevation gain, ascent and descent, than the other alternatives. Central B, again, sort of hugs the toe of the slope. It's a little bit more separated from PCH than the third alternative in green, Central C, which is very close to PCH and very flat. Finally, the east region is at least partially utilizing existing trail exiting from Wolfberg Park. However, there are 2 engineering challenges here. One is a recent landslide, which is shown in that sort of tongue of pink material, which has buried the existing trail of East A, which is in blue. And then the alternative would be to avoid that landslide, add some sort of grading to cross the existing stormwater drainage channel, just to divert that trail into a more direct alignment. But that would require more grading and other modifications to the existing condition. So now I'll present the feasibility rankings for each of these alignments. So for each of the criteria on the left, with each trail segment, we scored those on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 is the most favorable or the most feasible with basically minimal alteration to the existing conditions, and 4 is the most unfavorable or not really feasible without impractical modification to the condition. So for the trailhead region, trailhead B scores somewhat better. We have an average score of 1.4 as opposed to 1.9 for trailhead A. So that's preferred. And this is largely because of the challenges of trying to grade a trail on the steep slope around the LA sand pumping station. So that downside and the challenge of trying to do that outweighs the drawback of having a short segment that's very close to PCH. In the West region, the West A alignment, so the more northern alignment in blue, is preferred. That scores better because the challenges of routing pedestrians around and across the driveway for the Caltrans maintenance yard, as well as the proximity to PCH, are less favorable than the route closer to the toe of slope, which creates more separation from PCH. In the central region, the two lower routes, B and C, are ranked comparably and preferred. We think that central B, which again has a little bit more separation from PCH, both in terms of horizontal distance and vertical separation, is slightly preferred because there are fewer criteria that are scored a 3. So fewer criteria that require that extra level of modification and design. And Central A, the upper route, was basically eliminated as not feasible for a number of reasons. One of them is accessibility. The grade of that trail would be significantly steeper than ADA accessibility requirements along its entire length. It is possible to get exceptions to that. For example, the trails in Wolfberg Park don't meet those requirements. But if there's a future use case where you have people walking between the corner of PCH and Temescal and the future pedestrian bridge at Will Rogers, we would want the trail to be accessible to those users and not have a barrier to use. And then in addition to that, the upper trail would just be difficult to maintain from a hours of use enforcement perspective. It would be difficult to make sure that people are not setting up camps there. It also creates the potential that in the future, someone might want to park along Via de las Olas and then use the trail to get to the beach. And we're not really trying to encourage that use of the trail. So Central A, the upper route, was eliminated. And then finally, with the East region, both of these potential alignments are challenging. This area is just going to be a little bit challenging. I think either is feasible, but they require more modification to the existing condition, either by remediating a landslide deposit or a recent landslide, which is burying the East A trail alignment, or by needing some additional structure or a greater degree of grading to create a trail bed that meets accessibility requirements along East B. So we don't really have a recommendation between these two at this time. We think, they're comparable and both feasible, but somewhat challenging, and it may just be necessary to make that decision at the time that the project proceeds. And then finally, we also looked at the feasibility of the 3 lateral trails. These are all feasible, so it's possible to put together a permutation of the alignments in whichever form is desired. Lateral 1 is a little bit more difficult than the others because it's a little bit steeper and has more of a cross grade, but that is likely what we will recommend utilizing because it avoids the route that crosses the Caltrans maintenance yard driveway. So we have a final feasibility ranking matrix that shows the average score and the individual scores for each of the alignments evaluated. So the recommended route from this evaluation is Trailhead B, which is the southern route, along lateral 1 up to the West A route, using the lateral route down to Central B, and then we don't have a final recommendation for East A or East B. So if anyone has any questions or comments at this time, I'd be happy to field them. We also have a very short poll that we're hosting through Teams that is available at this link and at the QR code. We'll provide the link to Sue so that that can be distributed, and that'll be open for a week as we did last time. So I see Leanne, you have your hand up.
Well, actually, I had my hand up first. I think
You go ahead. You go
Sue is
ahead,
the
Chris.
person that usually calls on the speakers.
Yeah,
And but whatever.
I'll call them, don't worry about it. And then I also have a question. I just didn't put my hand up. Go ahead,
So-
Chris.
Oh, okay. So thank you so much. Goodwin, that was very helpful. I appreciate it. I happen to live, right above the area, and I've had some concerns. Did you guys investigate that landslide, whether it's still moving or you think it's pretty stable by now? I mean, I'm concerned because there had been, previous, and who knows what's going on now with the fire, but there had been previous, water coming out of that hillside. It seemed very unstable. So what is your conclusion about that? And, how are we going to address that? And another part of my questioning has to do with ADA requirements and accessibility. Is that going to be true for all of this trail? Will be pretty much accessible, or how is this going to work?
So starting with the landslide, we didn't do any sort of direct investigation of the activity of the landslide deposits. So no inclinometers have been installed. There aren't monitoring of surface monuments. We haven't done anything like that. Our evaluation for the feasibility criteria was basically just based on would the modification required potentially destabilize the existing landslides further, number one, and two, is the alignment such that it would present an increased risk and increased hazard to trail users. So for example, the East A alignment where there's the recent landslide deposit, even if that were graded and remediated, the activity there suggests that there might be a future hazard related to rockfall or another landslide. And so that was ranked lower with a higher number score because of that safety concern. Similarly, Trailhead A, which goes around the pump station, in order to construct a trail along the toe of slope there, it might require cutting into the toe, which could potentially destabilize the landslide further. So that was ranked lower for that reason. I will say that generally, it appears that if these landslides are moving, they are creeping. There is certainly, as a result of bluff retreat and erosion, a risk of rockfall, a risk that there might be some other slope movement. But the feasibility criteria are based on not creating any destabilization of the existing condition, which is appears to be, at least moderately stable. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Just ADA accessibility throughout the trail.
Yeah, so we are trying to keep everything to less than an 8 1/3% grade anywhere. And if there's going to be anything between 5 and 8.33%, we're going to try to keep it to under 200 feet, which is the requirement. But in general, the target would be 5% or less.
Okay. I'm going to jump in with a quick question and then Leanne and Sharon and Rob. I'm curious about, obviously a path hasn't been decided upon yet, but what is the timing looking like for all of this?
That's an excellent question.
Do you have any idea?
Goodwin, I can speak to this.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So this is kind of our first step in the process. Kind of Goodwin touched on it earlier. We have to go through Caltrans. All of this is Caltrans land. So we wanted to get this kind of tentative route as Goodwin's showing on the screen so that we can submit it to them, get that real estate process started, which I understand from them could take years. In the meantime, while we're doing that, we would be working on a design. Kind of depending on what happens after we talk to our stakeholders again, we'll determine if we need to do a consultant design, if we're going to be able to keep it within the city staff. We have to kind of wait and see what they say at that stakeholder meeting. But our goal would be to do those concurrently.
Okay, so if it's going to take, I guess my question is, when are you going to be making this decision so that you can then move it along?
Once we talk to our stakeholders, I imagine in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, depending on their availability, we would want to finalize this feasibility report and then submit a route to Caltrans to get that started.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Leanne?
Yes, thank you. I want to speak to a lot of people on this call that I know we're all experiencing a lot of trauma, and I didn't know how difficult this would be to hear about. And I know you mean well, but having worked with the homeless task force, for me, your head is just like it's going to be a trail for them to go do their encampments and start fires. And kids maybe with fireworks. You know, I live on the Asilomar Bluff and I fought it for so many years. So it's very difficult for me to, I've actually worked with the homeless task force, and maybe Sharon Kilbride can speak to this. But we go up in that area, and the more difficult it is, the better. So it's just, we're in a different place now. And a little part of me is just like, how much LA money is this? And can we redirect it to the citizens or the city? And that's, I can't help it, but it is in my mind.
Thank you. I'm sure it's in a lot of people's minds. Sharon?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time up in the area where these proposed trails are going to be laid. And there are a lot of problems. There are natural springs. In fact, one of the fire roads has collapsed up there. It was home to about 80 embedded camps. It took us 3 years to clear all those folks out, get most of them housed, but it's a big task. The other problem is brush clearance. I mean, I was just up there a month ago with Arus from CD11 and Wrexham Parks. And even after the fire, the mustard is now like 6 feet high. So brush clearance is a big concern. Nobody seems to ever have managed that. So going forward, I mean, we really have to have brush clearance. That area has to be cleaned annually, and signage with no camping needs to be implemented, and no fires. So I hope we're just thinking of that in the long term if this proposed trail is approved. So it's a huge concern for the community. Fire is, as you all know, the #1 concern. And that is where we had at least 3 fires in the past within the last 7 years. So I just want to make sure you all are aware of that. Huge concern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Rob?
And
Oh, sorry.
I'll just say that we did try to take that into consideration. One of the advantages of all of these lower routes that are recommended is that they're visible from PCH. So, you know, monitoring the use and how people are utilizing the space close to the trail is easier than with that upper route in the central region in particular. If, for example, there were a desire to put a fence along the length of the trail, that might also be something that's easier to implement on a lower, more direct route. We didn't consider, those specific intervention measures or like controls that might become part of the project, because beyond the extent to which they are different between the alignments. So, but we did consider it where we think it would be easier and more feasible to implement those sorts of controls. That was generally scored. Those alignments were ranked higher for that reason.
A good one. I just want to also say that this is going to be on Caltrans property, okay? Rexon Parks does do some brush clearance, but Caltrans really doesn't get involved in brush clearance. So that might be a problem as well. So make sure that that is brought to the table going forward if it's proposed to be on Caltrans property, okay? I have a lot of experience in that, so just FYI. Thanks.
I appreciate that. And there is a comment box in the poll. So if you'd like to add a comment, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Rob, you're next.
The table.
Okay.
Do you want
Hi, Goodwin. My name is Rob Weber. I actually was a member of the Potrero Canyon Citizens Advisory Group since 2005. So I have a lot of familiarity with this project. I worked on it for almost a dozen years with George Wolfberg personally. I appreciate the work that's been put into this. I have one question and a couple of comments. My question is, how much has this effort cost so far? Just how much has been spent on this analysis? And I ask that question because I don't want you overthinking this. And I've said this for years to people at BOE who've been involved with this. There is an existing trail. There's an existing footpath that covers probably 90 to 95% of this of this area, of this route. I understand it's not ideal in some places. I understand that it's not separated significantly from PCH other than with K-rails in some places, but it will require very little money to get that trail up and running. And as you've heard from some other people, and it should be obvious, is the city doesn't have money. So I would really strongly, and so I was a little surprised to not see any scoring done, from what I could tell, on these alternatives in terms of how much this is going to cost. I think that the city should focus on the quickest, cheapest, most cost-effective way to get this trail done. This is a trail that's required by the coastal permit, so it has to be done. But let's do it as quickly and cheaply as possible and get it over with. I'm really disappointed to hear that it might take years to get Caltrans to sign off on this. We've been asking, I personally, along with George, David Card, a few other people, have been asking about the getting Caltrans sign off to cross part of this property since I think 2016 is 2025. This is taking way too long. Let's get this done quickly, cheaply, if we can. Thank you very much, but I would appreciate an answer to the question of how much has been spent on the analysis so far. Thank you.
If you know Goodwin, do you have any idea?
Our contract for this work, which includes the topographic survey, which was flown aerially, so there's both the contours that you see, there's aerial imagery, there's on-the-ground surveying of various features, establishing property lines, submitting the record of survey. So that portion is about half of the budget for this project.
Which is?
And the total budget is a little bit less than $100,000.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Beth and then Donna.
Yeah, my concern about this project has always been fires. Of course, I want to, support the park and public access, but in 2021, we did have an arsonist set a fire of 1,200 acres. So have you guys thought about a fence that could prevent people entering there not to be able to access starting a fire?
So we've considered that to the extent that it's a differentiating factor between the alignments. If that is a design criteria that's settled upon for the trail, that would be implemented regardless of what the alignment is. But using the example of the central segment again, implementing that for central A, the upper route, would be much more challenging and expensive than picking an alignment that is visible from PCH, more direct with less elevation change. So those lower routes were generally scored higher on that criteria.
Okay, thank you. Donna?
Thank you, Goodwin. It's a really very careful, methodical study, and I appreciate it. I love looking at topos. There's always so much information. I had a question regarding the future bridge, and is there a location on the east end of this, and at what elevation it would be coming in at from Wolfberg Park, and how it would connect to this trail? Are they going to be interconnected or?
And the objective is to make them interconnected. I am not involved with the bridge project, and I don't have an alignment from them to connect with. However, there is this existing ramp that comes out of Wolfberg Park, which my best understanding right now is that the bridge will tie in with that as well. So we are trying to tie in with that in a way that will be as compatible as possible with the bridge project.
Great. And then just another thought in terms of the totality of this and why I think this is so important. So we have the wonderful Wolfberg Park. We have the recreation park. And then finally, we're going to have a connecting piece that takes you back over to Temescal Canyon. And then, of course, Temescal is a scenic parkway that goes up to Temescal Gateway Park. So in fact, what you have done is completed the Emerald Necklace. That's something that I've always referred to and always hoped that this would happen sooner or later. So I think if people can look at it in terms of an emerald necklace, the more people you have on a trail, the safer it is. And this might be a good opportunity as well to have volunteers that walk the park every day and just make that a part of the Palisades volunteer system. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Rena?
Thanks. And thank you, Goodwin. You really did put together an amazing presentation. My question is a different kind of security question. What are the plans that are in place or that you're thinking about to protect the pieces of the trail that go awfully close to PCH, especially I can see just from the drawing at the end near Temescal, but even in other sections where it seems to come close, how would hikers people walking on the trail be protected from traffic on PCH? Thanks.
So with the exception of the trailhead segment, which is essentially sidewalk along PCH, that is the one section that is immediately adjacent. The other recommended segments all have some horizontal and vertical separation. So for example, in the portion of Central B in magenta that is closest to PCH horizontally, there is like a 5 or 6 foot vertical difference between the elevation of the road and the elevation of the trail. And so that's part of the appeal of that one is it's visible, it's direct, hopefully easier to secure and maintain, but also gives you a little bit of benefit for the user experience and for user safety in that there's a little bit more separation from cars, and it's not just horizontal, it's topographic separation as well.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob, your hand is still up, but I don't think you have any more questions, right? Thank you. Okay, good one. I can't thank you enough, you and Kristen both, for coming. And if we see questions in the chat later on, I'll get a copy of that tomorrow and I'll send them your way.
That's great.
Okay? Thank you so
Thank
much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, back to the regular agenda. Jenny has joined us now. Jenny, do you have any details for the treasurer's report?
I'm sorry that I was a little bit late
It's okay.
logging in. I don't know what report you already gave, but today we have $720,863.92 in our US bank account. Not too much activity since our last meeting. A couple donations, $23, $96, and we paid our monthly MailChimp bill for $54. We have been working on opening a Schwab money market account where we can put this money that we've been given for fire recovery, that we can earn a little bit of a higher interest rate while we're figuring out what to do with it. And we've gone through the paperwork to open the account, and now it's just I haven't actually transferred the money that we want to put in it yet, but apparently it's pretty easy to do. It's very it's a money market with Schwab that's like 100% treasuries. It's pretty low risk. The interest rate, I don't know, like as of a couple days ago, was 3.91 or something. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. Appreciate the details. Now it is time for general public comment, and I know we have a couple people wanting to announce a few things. Are you all here? Okay. Landon?
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Landon Nash. I'm the co-founder of Cosmic Buildings and Cosmic Foundation. We are an end-to-end custom prefab home builder, currently working with over 35 families on their rebuilds. I know one of our team members, Kent, has talked to some of you individually, but I wanted to formally share an initiative that we're really, really proud to be launching. As a public benefit corporation, we've always been mission-driven and committed to balancing profits with purpose. And that's why we're proud and excited to be announcing our 110 initiative. For every 10 homes that we sell, our foundation is going to donate one home to a family in need that can't afford to rebuild. This is a revenue-backed giving. We're not relying on donations in order to do this, and funded solely by us. We're donating 10% of our revenue to support this initiative and to support the larger community. We're committed not just to building homes, but to build stability and resilience. The homes that we are donating are not lesser versions of our homes. They are built with the same high quality materials, fire resistant, Class A, above the wildland urban interface, net zero sustainable homes. We believe that everybody deserves an opportunity to have a home that they can feel safe in and have a high quality home. We're able to afford this because of our building system and a mobile robotic factory, which we use to build our homes, which allow us to be more efficient. And it allows us to lower the costs, and this is the reason that we're able to do this. We believe in this model. It's automated, it's resilient, it's very community driven, and this will be going public in the next coming weeks, but we wanted to announce it here first and appreciate the opportunity to speak. We will have a formal application process where families and individuals can apply to be one that are given one of these free homes. It'll be evaluated by third parties and chosen by our foundation. So really, really excited to announce this. We appreciate you having us on. Happy to answer any questions, or obviously you can feel free to reach out to me directly.
It's just an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing thing you're doing. And I know I've spoken to Kent, Lori's spoken to Kent several times, and we're in awe of what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Thank you for having us.
We have a hand up. Would you have a question, or is that another public comment? Okay. Go ahead. It says CCR Lex. I'm not sure what your name is. Sorry. Oh, is that? You're also on mute.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize. Yeah, my name doesn't show up, but some kind of code from my office does, so I apologize for that. I just want to talk real briefly just about
Excuse me, can you tell us your name for the?
David Howard.
David
Oh,
Howard,
Dave,
thank you.
Dave, I can never see that it's you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I just want to speak real quickly about public safety and my experience in the Palisades over the last couple of weeks. I've spent a lot of time up there as we're getting close to hopefully beginning our rebuild. And the week right after the roadblocks and checkpoints were removed, while all the civil unrest and stuff was going on downtown, we had an amazing amount of officers in the Palisades. I drove up Chautauqua, made a right-hand turn, and right at the base of the Alphabets, there's a police car. I went up a little bit higher. I live up on Whitfield, and on the way out of Whitfield on Monument and Bester, there was a police car. There's a couple police cars in the village, and there's police cars on the bluff side of Via. And we, myself and a couple neighbors, were very responsive to them and made sure that they understood how thankful we were that they were there protecting us in spite of everything that was going on around town. And I think they felt really good and responded well to that. The following weekend, though, it was completely opposite. I was there last Saturday and last Sunday for a couple of hours each, and I literally saw 0 police cars. I saw 1 highway patrol car. I know these cars are mobile. I know they're moving throughout different neighborhoods, but we don't have to discuss it now. But I'm just wondering if other people, and specifically the people on this call, because we seem to be the most active, have seen or experienced anything similar to that. And if that is the case, I did speak to one patrol company in the area that you guys are all familiar with. I'll leave them nameless for now. And I asked them, how are things going? And they said overall pretty well. At night, as people are repopulating, they are seeing a lot of people or a lot of individuals that are potentially casing homes, which is an issue because as more people move back to adjacent neighborhoods, as these neighborhoods get built up, I just want to make sure that we're getting what was promised to us from LAPD and their commitments. So just wanted to bring it out for, I don't want to open up a can of worms for you now based in terms of response, but I think it's something we need to watch closely.
Okay, agreed. I will say I go up there almost every day, and I know there's other people on the call, some of whom are already living there. I tend to see, I've seen more cars, I guess, than you did the last time. The LAPD officers are having roll calls every morning, and they have publicized where those are. If any of you want to go to one of the roll calls and speak to any of them, and I know that they are also paying for private patrol companies. I think there's 3 different companies that LAPD is actually footing the bill for right now. As far as I can tell, they're doing the best they can, but we definitely need to be, on the lookout and keeping track. Miriam?
Thanks. I was just going to say that we opened, or at least we gave them the code to be able to get into their stop-in station on Sunset Boulevard. I want to say on Tuesday, was it, on the mayor's call? And I saw with my own eyes that they shift. So there were 6 officers that came in at the end of their shift, and another 6 came in that were at the beginning of their shift. They kind of did a handoff, and then everybody fanned out to do their thing. And then I've actually repopulated into the Palisades, as some of you know, and about 20 minutes later, I saw 2 of them in the area that I'm in. So I do think they come up. Of course, I don't know for sure. David, I don't know, maybe one of the cars doesn't make it or whatever, but they certainly do that roll call at 10 o'clock in the morning every day, and they make a show of bringing 6 in the morning. They have 12-hour shifts, and then they do another 6 officers for another 12-hour shift. And I think one of the reasons why they were so grateful that the community was finally able to give them a stop-in station, and I didn't know this, is that for 12 hours, it's very difficult to drive around in your car and not know where to, take the most basic of rests. So I do think they're around. We can certainly keep tabs on them. And as Sue says, they have 3 private agencies that they are now paying. Those private agencies, you'll see them at night because they drive around with their lights on. So they're kind of a force multiplier. I know they're out there. Yesterday, Commander Tom said they had no reports yet. So
Yeah, that's the one thing I just want to mention is that if people are seeing anything, they need to report it, as you guys know, because if we don't report it, then they just assume everything's fine, and it doesn't work that way. So you have to speak up. It's very, very, very important, because the less reports they get, the more likely they are to redeploy these officers who are, supposedly earmarked for us to go to different parts of town. So please do that.
Right. That's what they repeat over and over. Please report. It's
Yeah,
important.
it's essential.
Leanne?
I think they both, Miriam and David have said good things. I attended the police meeting yesterday for CPAB, and they did say there was 0 crime last week. So Miriam's exactly right. And it is really important, if anything happens in the Palisades, that we are reporting it and they know about it. And I believe Senior Lead Officer Brian Espin is still on vacation, so he's not on the call tonight. And I mean, they've had a really hard month. We all know that LAPD is just here to protect its citizens. And the whole situation with ICE has been really hard for them, and a lot of confusion for citizens, not realizing that LAPD is on our team of Angelinos and has nothing to do with that. So what I would say also is, when you do see an officer in the Palisades, it means a lot to say thank you and how grateful we've been. I said in the meeting yesterday to all of the West LA to let them know that the Pacific Palisades, is so grateful for what they have done for us for the last 5 months. And we have a great relationship with them, and they really came through for us. And just thank you goes a long way.
They really appreciate it.
For sure.
They do.
Thank you, Leanne. That was very important. Paloma, I see you. And I know you have something to tell us about.
Yes, I was trying to turn on my camera, but I can't find the button. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We can hear you. That's the most important thing.
Thank you. I mean, my name is Paloma Bustos, and I'm with the Sunita Jain Anti-Trafficking Initiative. It's a program based out of Loyola Law School. We primarily focus on developing and advocating for policies that prevent human trafficking and support human trafficking survivors. You may have, if you have attended any of the ad hoc committees for the LA recovery, you may have heard me speak about the connection between human trafficking and natural disasters. And so the reason that we have been going to the meetings to make public comments is because we want to make sure that the city takes measures to prevent human trafficking. And so you, like many others, may not see the connection between human trafficking and natural disasters, but unfortunately, that's a connection that we see across the country. We saw it after Hurricane Katrina. We saw it after Hurricane Harvey, where unfortunately, when people are displaced or when they lose their jobs, they're in a high vulnerability to become trafficked. And just to be clear, trafficking, there it is, my camera's turned on. Just to be clear, trafficking, when we're talking about trafficking, we're referring to the use of force, fraud, or coercion for the purpose of performing commercial sex or labor services, right? And so the reason that we have been making these public comments at the city council, again, is to make sure that they implement specific measures, specific language to bring public awareness around the issue of human trafficking, to make sure that any contracts they're having with people that are with corporations that are rebuilding and helping with the recovery, that there's a 0 tolerance policy on human trafficking. And we also are asking them to provide training so that people are able to recognize what human trafficking looks like and where to report it. And just to give you an idea, like I mentioned, like most people don't make this connection, but we do see it. For instance, there was a study just recently as of 2024 that showed that 32% of construction workers were trafficked. Other people that are vulnerable to be in traffic include domestic workers. That's people that are cleaning up the houses. That can also include day laborers. So you yourself may not be in a position where you feel like you might not be able to recognize it, but there's obviously certain signs. And that's information that I can share with you. I can put on here on the chat. So you can look at our page and perhaps learn a little bit more about human trafficking. Again, we might feel disconnected from this issue, but it does happen. It does happen in our country. I know that we may assume that people that are only vulnerable to the trafficking is immigrants and people that don't speak English. But unfortunately, we've also seen US citizens, legal residents being coerced into human trafficking. So that's an area that we've been trying to advocate for with the city council. And I'll just quickly say that the county, that's advocacy that we've also been doing with the county. Fortunately, the county on April 1st was able to pass a motion where they implemented these measures on public awareness, training, and procurement. So that way there's specific language and information about human trafficking. They've even partnered with.
I hate to interrupt you, but we're going a little bit over. It's a little bit over with public comment timeframes. Can you put the link?
Yes,
in
I will
chat for
definitely
everybody?
put that. I'll definitely put that. I mean, again, just wanted to bring that attention to your group, and
Yeah.
I'll put that information in the chat. You can visit our website if you want to learn more information. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I'm
Thanks
sorry I went
very much.
overboard.
Thanks for coming. No, thanks for
No
coming.
worries.
Okay, any more general public comment or if not, okay, we're going to move on. So from the chair, I'm just going to reiterate that our meeting was moved from the 10th to the 17th of July, so make sure you've got that on your calendar. I want to let you know that in this past week, I have formed 2 new committees. The first one is the grants committee, and we'll hear more about that later when we talk about a motion. But the grants committee is going to be sort of in charge of looking at grant applications that we get of groups that are looking for help with funding. Quentin is the chair of that committee, and the other members are Miriam Czar, Chris Spitz, Lori Kudzel, Andrew Wolfberg, Janet Anderson, and Steve Crone. So I thank each and every one of them. They all said yes immediately when I asked them. So I really appreciate that. And the other committee that's not new, but newly formed for this coming year is the bylaws committee.